Welcome back. Better Than Let's Play episode 5. I'm Enigmius, and today we've got a loaded episode. We're building coke ovens, and shortly we will build a blast furnace. These are steps that I'm taking in pursuit of this whole long chain of things that sort of wound up emerging when I decided that it was time to expand on my storage network. Of all things, here's the blast furnace going in. Here's what happened. I decided that it was time to focus on my storage system. I was going to put the Applied Energistics ME system, get it started anyways, into place to kind of straighten out my storage situation, because I've got all these chests that are basically temporary storage. They aren't where I would like them to be, but I don't want to just keep moving from one chest to another chest to another chest. It's just kind of silly. So I decided to aim for a more permanent solution. Along the way, I came to realize that some of the components require things that require an assembly table, which requires lasers, which requires more energy than my system is currently able to manage. Well, I could do it, it's just, it would be kind of a burden. Now, it's natural that we have to expand our power plant from time to time as we play based on our needs. Our needs expand, so our power plant has to match it. And based on the structural plans that I have, I'm not in a position to start working on boilers right now, so I decided to expand my existing system, which is basically converting netherrack into lava, and then using that to produce Minecraft jewels, and storing the Minecraft jewels in a redstone energy cell. That's a pretty decent way to do it. And in order to expand on that, I need, first of all, a way to store more lava than just the little portable tanks that I've been using. So I said, alright, well, we've got iron tanks. Actually, we've got steel tanks, which are like iron, only they hold twice as much. So that was kind of neat. So that's why you see the coke oven and the blast furnace. Now, I'm not a stranger to coke ovens and blast furnaces. I know they have an unfortunately lengthy operation time for each unit of material they process, and I've always been opposed to that, but not so much that I wanted to get really all that bent out of shape over it. It wasn't that big of a deal, but what happened was I needed a rolling machine to make the steel plates that would be used to make the blocks that would be used to make the tanks. So I made the rolling machine and I hooked it up to my energy network and noticed almost immediately that it was producing a constant power drain. Not a lot of power, but a constant power drain nonetheless. And that's when I kind of finally realized that my intention isn't to make this personal, but it's just, I believe it to be the truth that the devs that are coming up with these ideas just don't really get it. To me, the whole idea is it's a game, and it should be fun. And that doesn't mean it has to be easy. It doesn't mean it has to be without challenge. It doesn't mean that there should be rewards without a cost. In fact, it should mean that there is a cost, be it time, skill, patience, perseverance, whatever, in order to earn these rewards. That's kind of the whole idea. But when we start talking about appending costs to things, be it time or resources, for no reason other than to say that there's a cost, is just poor design. It's poor design. It's disrespectful of the player and the player experience for the sake of what? Getting the jollies, making people wait an hour for a stack of steel? Or look at all these people micromanaging their machines for no reason other than we made them. I don't understand, and it's not a case of some profane 11-year-old is going to be able to explain it to me because I'm somehow deficient, I'm lazy, I don't like a challenge, I don't want to work for anything, blah, blah, blah. The thing is, let's look at the rolling machine and this power drain, which apparently is extended to a lot of the other Buildcraft, Railcraft forestry machines, is that it's a cost with no reward at all. You can't say that avoiding the cost is the reward. That's a cop-out. That's a bullshit excuse. The whole idea is if you want me to micromanage those machines, then do something that makes them perform better from micromanaging them, not do something that allows me to avoid this persistent cost. Because in one case, you're forcing me to do something to avoid that cost, but you're not giving me anything in exchange for it. So there's a cost, there's a punishment, but there's no reward, and that's piss poor game design. You will not find an experienced game designer that will disagree. They know better. They know every cost has to come with a reward. And right now we're going through this phase where it's like, we have to add all these costs. We have to make it as painful and as arduous as possible every step of the way in order to justify these rewards, or we're doing it wrong. And no, doing it wrong is turning it into a job at the design level, so that the fun factor comes from just eliminating the misery. That's why. Is it a lack of imagination? Is it that people are out of ideas? They've been doing it for years now. They've been supporting these mods. They've been updating these mods. They've been controlling these mods. They're out of ideas, so make it hurt. Hurt so good? Is that the idea? Because it's not hard to do better. You just have to try. And first of all, one of the first steps to doing that is to stop making excuses for why punishing players is a good idea, because it's just not. I'm at this point now with these mod packs where I'm kind of in it with this series, but if I keep encountering these changes to these mods that serve absolutely, they don't bring anything new or interesting to the table, they just serve to be a different way of punishing people, I'm just going to start pulling them. And it'll be interesting to see what's left with when we find all the mods that find that balance between cost versus reward. You know, you invested all this time finding all these crazy materials, you've made the investment in the reward, so here it is, no strings attached, versus, you know, the quest for the golden fleece was just the beginning, and now that you've got it, we're going to make sure that you regret ever having invested the time to get it in the first place. Now, the cop-out excuses, if you don't like it, just don't play it. Yeah, I know. That's not the point. The point is we're discussing what's wrong. So the idea is that we bring it forward in an intelligent way, pointing to specifics why it's wrong, so that hopefully we can get a message out to some of these developers that they don't need to do it that way anymore. They can focus on making their mods fun, and people will love them and play them. And if you don't believe me, how many people kept using combustion engines after thermal expansion came out? It's a thing. It's the fact of the matter, is that when you give people an opportunity to enjoy something with a cost and a reward, that's where they're going to go. If their other alternative is just the punishment, and the whole process of playing the game is to avoid the punishment with no reward. That's the thing. So the benefit to me in this whole situation is that I found a really great stash of diamonds in my hidden mine shaft, and now the landscaping in front of my towers is almost flat. Still gotta figure out what I'm gonna do with all that friggin' coal coke and steel that I don't want to use anymore. But that's the editorial part. Now, there's a question that has come up a couple of times, and I mentioned to someone that I would explain in a video sort of what's going on. The question was, where do I get my ideas for the builds that I do? Now, this is a game called Albion Prelude, X3, very important, X3, Albion Prelude, that I play from time to time when I have the opportunity. It's basically a sandbox space game where you can fly all kinds of different spaceships and do all kinds of different missions. You can build your own space stations that do different things and make different things, and you can amass a fortune and do fun stuff in space, basically. But I know what you're saying. What the hell does that have to do with Minecraft? Well, as I'm playing this game, I'm encountering all these crazy spaceships in space with lasers and space stations and all these structures and constructions that are made by sentient beings, including humans. And it kind of eventually influences sort of the thought process. So when I'm designing something like the three towers aren't the structure. The three towers are just the beginning. Based on playing this game and seeing all these different space stations and spaceships, I got the idea to do sort of a complex setup, where the 3 towers might be the center of that, and then it just sprawls out wherever it needs to go. Now, as an example, one of the next structural additions that I'll be making is actually going to be an arm that extends out over one of the lakes with a bunch of aqueous accumulators basically dunked down into the water, accumulating water. Not because we need that. I've already got 3 aqueous accumulators that are capable of producing all the water that I could ever need, but because why not? Sometimes we have to do things because they're fun, because they're interesting, not because they're necessarily the best or most efficient way. You can see here, this is a military outpost that I'm zoomed in on. It's friendly, which is part of the reason I'm not shooting at it. And it's just looking at things from a different perspective. We can see we've got a bunch of little orbs on the end of those arms there, and it's got like a central feature. It's that column starts out wide and then goes narrow and then down. But it's still got plenty of room to be different shapes in different places and all kinds of crazy stuff. You'll see some of these ones. This is, you know, a little bit more outlandish. You can't even really tell what might be a unified shape. You see a couple of patterns duplicated, but overall, it seems kind of random. So what do we do if we don't have gravity? How would that influence how we build? How would we change the way we do things if everything was... It made a lot more sense to have it in a complex, because you can't have a neighborhood with just sidewalks. Everything has to be connected together because it's space, and people can't just step out the front door and go for a stroll in open space. So that was a big part of the idea that I got for the big picture, for the structure that we're building in our world. And that's, believe me, it has the potential to get extremely large. These structures, in fact, these space stations are human space stations. They're purpose-built. They each have their own individual purposes, but you can see there's symmetrical components, and there's components that are just, what the hell, this makes sense to have it here from a construction or from a functional point of view, so let's just put it there. So that's what I'm working with in this world, is trying to get a lock on individual components in a complex that makes sense to some extent, even though it won't necessarily make sense to the most efficient way of doing things in modded Minecraft. So that's where this came from, the whole idea. I find inspiration for the builds everywhere, and you can see, like I said, we're not trying to copy any of these structures. It's just coming up with that different idea of how would things look if they didn't have a sloped roof, or, you know, whatever. So that's this episode. It's been crazy. I don't expect to be doing editorials on a regular basis in this series, but this one sort of came up and I decided to try and be at least marginally productive instead of just a pure rant, if that makes any sense. Leave your comments and feedback below. Please keep it civil. If you can't manage civil, I can manage delete. It's just a simple thing. If you don't want to subscribe to my channel because you don't subscribe to YouTube's, that's cool. You can follow me on the Twitters and be notified when I add new videos. Otherwise, you can always subscribe by clicking a button somewhere that says subscribe. Thanks for watching, guys, and take care.